Hello, my friend. Today I want to tell you a simple and touching story about a man named Mr. Thomas. He is 65 years old and lives alone in a small, quiet town. His wife passed away 5 years ago, and since then his house feels very quiet and lonely. But one day he gets a letter from his old friend. This letter brings hope and a new chance for Mr. Thomas. This story is about how he finds new strength and happiness, even when life feels hard. Let's listen to Mr. Thomas's story together and feel the power of hope and love inside us all. Mr. Thomas was 65 years old. He lived in a small house in a quiet town in Ohio. The streets were clean, the trees were clear, air was cool in the morning. His house was simple. It had only 2 rooms, a small kitchen, and a front porch with one wooden chair. He had lived there for more than 30 years. But now he was alone. His wife, Margaret, had passed away 5 years ago. She was kind and full of life. Every evening they used to sit on the porch, drink tea, and talk about their day. After she was gone, everything felt different. The house looked the same, but the feeling was gone. Her voice, her laughter, it was all missing, and nothing could fill that empty space. Every morning, Mr. Thomas woke up at 6 a.m. Even when he had nothing to do, he kept the same routine. He made a cup of coffee and sat outside. Sometimes a neighbor passed by with a dog. Sometimes a car drove down the road, but no one stopped to say hello. So he just watched the sky, listened to the birds, and remembered the past. He used to be a history teacher at the local school. He loved to tell stories about strong people, about freedom, and about change. His students liked him because he made history feel real. He worked for 35 years. When he retired, the school gave him a clock. He put it in the living room. Now, the clock ticked slowly, like it was growing old too. His daughter Emily lived in New York. She was a nurse and had 2 little boys. She called him every Sunday, but the calls were short. "Hi, Dad, how are you? The kids are loud today. We'll talk next week." He always said, "Take care. I love you." But sometimes she ended the call before he could finish his sentence. And after the calls, the house felt even quieter. That evening, he opened an old drawer and took out a photo album. He wiped the dust and turned the pages. He saw photos from his wedding day, his daughter's birthday, their first car, family dinners. He touched a picture of Margaret smiling near a tree. A tear fell from his eye. He did not wipe it away. He just sat in the chair near the window and watched the sky turn orange as the sun went down. And then he asked himself in a soft voice, "Is this all that is left? Just old photos, an empty room, and short phone calls on Sundays?" The sun was almost gone. A soft orange light filled the quiet room. Mr. Thomas was still sitting near the window, holding the photo album on his lap. His heart felt heavy, but then his eyes saw something. A small white envelope was resting on the edge of the table, almost hidden under an old newspaper. He reached for it slowly, his fingers a little shaky. He read the name on the back. It was from Jack. His heart skipped a beat. Jack, his best friend from many years ago. They used to teach at the same school. They used to laugh, go fishing, and share stories over coffee. But life moved on, and they lost touch. Mr. Thomas hadn't heard from him in over a decade. He opened the letter carefully, like opening a door to the past. "Dear Thomas, it's been a long time. I hope you're doing okay. We moved to a small town near the ocean in California. The mornings are quiet here. The sky is big and the waves are calm. I go for a walk on the beach every day. It helps me think. I've been thinking about you. I know things have not been easy. Losing someone you love changes everything. But maybe it's time for something new. We have a guest room. Come stay with us. No pressure, no plans, just old friends, warm food, and a few quiet laughs. Think about it, Thomas. I think it would be good for you, your old friend, Jack." Mr. Thomas stared at the letter for a long time. His hands were still. His eyes were soft. He didn't move, but inside something began to stir like the first breeze before spring. He stood up and walked slowly to the window. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees. The street was still empty. No one walked by. But for the first time in many months, he felt a shift, not outside, but within. He touched the glass, looking out at the darkening sky. He whispered, "Is it really too late for a new chapter?" And in that moment, the silence in the room didn't feel so heavy. The quiet didn't feel so lonely. The letter was still in his hand, but now it felt like a key. That night, he didn't turn on the TV. He didn't make another cup of tea. He just sat with the letter, reading it again and again. And when he finally lay down to sleep, he placed it gently on his chest. For the first time in a long time, his mind was not filled with the past. It was thinking about something else, something simple, something possible, a journey. And as he closed his eyes, the moonlight touched the side of his face. Outside, the world was still. But inside, a quiet voice whispered, "Maybe this house is not the end. Maybe. There's more waiting for me." And that night, Mr. Thomas slept deeply. No bad dreams, no sudden waking, only the soft sound of hope breathing in the dark. The morning sun rose slowly, painting the sky with soft colors of gold and blue. Mr. Thomas stood at the bus station with a small brown suitcase in his hand. It was old, like him, but strong, also like him. Inside were only a few things, some clothes, a photo album, and the letter from Jack. That was all he needed. Around him, the station was full of life. Children laughed and pulled their bags. A woman spoke quickly on her phone. A man was drinking coffee, checking his watch. Mr. Thomas stood still, calm, quiet, but inside, his heart was beating faster than usual. This was the first time he had left town in many years. The last time he traveled was with Margaret, their 30th wedding anniversary in Chicago. That trip was full of laughter, love, and soft hotel beds. But now, she was gone. And this trip felt different. It was not a celebration. It was a search. The bus pulled in. It was big, white, and clean. The door opened with a soft hiss. Mr. Thomas stepped up, showed his ticket, and found a seat by the window. As the engine started, he looked back at his town one last time. He saw the grocery store where Margaret used to buy apples, the park where Emily played as a little girl, the bench near the church where he and Jack once sat and argued about baseball. All of it passed by, slowly, like pages in an old book closing one by one. He didn't cry. He just watched. The bus rolled through trees, small towns, rivers, and empty roads. Hours passed like quiet waves. The world outside kept moving, but inside, Mr. Thomas was still holding on to that one thought. This is not the end. This is something new. At one stop, a young man got on and sat next to him. He had headphones around his neck and a guitar in his hand. "Hi," the young man said with a smile. "Going far, sir?" "Yes," Mr. Thomas replied. "To California." The young man nodded. "Same here. I'm Leo. I want to be a musician, going to chase my dream." Mr. Thomas smiled gently. "That's brave." They didn't talk much at first, but slowly, as the road stretched on, words came easier. Mr. Thomas told Leo about his years as a teacher, about Margaret, and about Jack's letter. Leo listened with quiet respect. Then he said something that stayed in Mr. Thomas's mind for a long time. Most people wait too long to live again. Mr. Thomas didn't answer. He just looked out the window, watching the sunset paint the hills with orange and gold. Live again, he thought. What a simple idea. What a powerful truth. When the bus stopped for dinner, Leo helped Mr. Thomas with his bag. They sat together in a small cafe and shared burgers and fries. Mr. Thomas hadn't eaten fast food in years. It wasn't the best meal of his life, but it felt special. Not because of the taste, but because this time he wasn't eating alone. After 2 long days, the bus reached California. The air was warm, the sky was big, palm trees stood tall along the road, and there, near the edge of the station, stood Jack. He was older, yes, but still smiling with the same big smile. "Thomas!" he shouted. "You look the same." Mr. Thomas stepped off the bus, slow but steady. His back was stiff, but his heart felt light. They hugged, long and tight. Jack laughed. "You came." Mr. Thomas didn't say much, but his eyes said everything. This was not just a visit. This was a beginning. The road behind him was long, but now a new one had started. And for the first time in a long time, Mr. Thomas was ready to walk it. Jack's old blue car moved slowly along the quiet road. The sun was warm but soft, and the air smelled like salt and trees. Mr. Thomas sat in the passenger seat, watching the world outside. New houses, small gardens, people walking dogs, kids riding bikes. Everything felt calm here, like the town was breathing slowly. Jack talked as he drove. "It's peaceful here," he said. "No big buildings, just kind people, the sound of waves, and warm bread from the bakery down the road." Mr. Thomas nodded. Peace. That word felt good in his mind. As they drove past the last row of houses, the ocean came into view. It was wide and blue, and the waves moved in and out like a slow heartbeat. Jack smiled. "That's home." The house was small and white, with a bright red roof. In the front yard there were yellow flowers and a wooden chair under a tree. Behind the house was the beach, close enough that you could hear the water from the porch. Jack's wife, Linda, opened the door and waved. She had kind eyes and a soft voice. "Welcome, Mr. Thomas," she said. "You can stay as long as you like. Your room is ready." Inside, the house smelled like lemon and old wood. There were books on the shelves, family photos on the walls, and a small table with a vase of fresh flowers. It was simple. It was warm. It was not his house, but it felt like home. Linda brought him tea and cookies. They sat together and talked until the sky turned orange outside. They didn't speak of big things, just small things, soft things, things that made the silence feel gentle, not lonely. That night, Mr. Thomas sat on the porch alone. He looked out at the ocean. The waves moved like they were breathing with him. The wind touched his face like a hand saying, "You're safe now." He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. For the first time in many years, his chest didn't feel heavy. His thoughts didn't run in circles. His heart didn't ache like it used to. Something inside him had opened. The next morning, Jack said, "Let's take a walk." They walked slowly through the town. Everyone they passed said hello. "Good morning, Jack." "Hi there, sir." Some people asked, "Are you new here?" Mr. Runaway Thomas smiled. "Just visiting," he said, but in his heart it felt like something more. They stopped at a little cafe. A young woman brought them coffee. Her name was Maya. She was fast and friendly. "What do you do, sir?" she asked. "I used to be a teacher." He said, "History." She laughed. "My little brother hates history. Maybe you can change his mind." Mr. Thomas smiled. Something small moved inside him again. A memory, a feeling, a sense of purpose he thought he had lost. In the afternoon, Jack took him to the community center. "People come here to talk, read, help kids with schoolwork," he said. "You're welcome to join." Mr. Thomas looked inside. The room was full of life, drawings on the walls, books stacked high, and a few kids running around. It felt like a piece of his past had followed him here, a part he missed. One little boy ran up and asked, "Are you the new teacher?" Mr. Thomas laughed. "Maybe," he said. "Are you a good student?" The boy smiled and ran off. Jack turned to him. "They could use someone like you here." That evening, after dinner, Mr. Thomas sat outside again. The stars came out one by one. He looked up and thought deeply. He wasn't young anymore. Most of his life was already behind him. But for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like the story was over. He took out a small piece of paper and wrote just one line. "This is not retirement. This is my return." He folded the note and placed it gently in his pocket. The waves kept moving. The stars stayed quiet. But inside Mr. Thomas, something new was beginning. A fire, small but steady. The morning light came gently through the curtains. It painted soft gold on the walls. Mr. Thomas sat near the window in his new room, holding an old photograph in his hand. In the photo, Margaret was smiling beside a tall tree, her arms full of wildflowers. Her eyes were bright. Her dress moved gently in the wind. He touched the picture as if he could feel her warmth through the paper. That photo was more than a memory. It was a part of his heart. The room was quiet, but his mind was not. Thoughts came like waves, memories of years spent teaching, laughing, living, and loving. He remembered his time at the school. He didn't just teach history. He taught with love. He listened. He believed in every student, even the ones who made mistakes. One name came back to him: James. A boy who was always angry, always late, always silent. But Mr. Thomas never shouted. One day he gave James a book about Abraham Lincoln. The next week, James came early to class. "Sir," he asked, "how did Lincoln keep going when he lost so much?" Mr. Thomas had smiled that day and said, "Because he believed in something bigger than pain." He still remembered James's eyes that day, how they softened, how they opened. That one moment had stayed with him. It reminded him, teaching was never just a job. It was a way to touch a life. Then he thought about Margaret. She was more than his wife. She was his joy. She was the quiet laughter in the kitchen, the warm hand on his back when words were too hard. She made him tea when he was tired. She danced when it rained. And she always said, "We only get one life. Let's live all of it." After she passed, everything looked the same, but nothing felt alive. The house had walls, but no warmth. The bed had space, but no comfort. The rooms were filled with items, but empty of feeling. He missed small things: her voice in the morning, the way she folded towels, the smell of her hair, the way she touched his hand without needing to speak. All of it lived in his heart, but quietly, like unopened letters in a box. And now, in this room by the sea, he felt strong enough. He stood up, opened his suitcase, and took out a small wooden box. Inside were 5 letters, old, soft at the edges, still safe. He opened the first one. It was written in Margaret's handwriting. The ink had faded a little, but her voice came alive in every word. "My dear Thomas, thank you for being my quiet strength. You don't speak much, but I always feel your heart. You are the reason I believe in gentle love." He stopped reading for a moment. The letter rested on his lap. His hands trembled just a little, but there was no tear this time, only warmth. As he looked out the window, the wind moved the curtains like slow breathing. The ocean whispered in the distance. He placed the letter back in the box, gently, like a prayer. And in that moment, he didn't feel broken. He didn't feel old. He didn't feel like life had passed him by. He felt full, not in a loud way, not in a big way, just in a quiet, steady way, like a candle finally lit again. He whispered to himself, Thank you, Margaret, for your words, for your love, for reminding me I'm still here. And as the waves continued to sing outside, Mr. Thomas sat still in the golden light. He wasn't holding on to the past anymore. He was walking with it, side by side, and that was something new. A few days later, Mr. Thomas stood quietly in the corner of the community center. The room was warm and bright, filled with voices, footsteps, and the soft rustle of paper. Children were drawing at tables. 2 teenagers were playing chess. A little girl was showing her teacher a picture of her dog. Linda placed a gentle hand on Mr. Thomas's shoulder. They asked if you could tell them a story, she whispered with a smile. They know you were a teacher. They're curious. Mr. Thomas looked across the room. The children were watching him now, some with wide eyes, some still coloring. A small boy with missing front teeth waved at him and called, "Hey, do you know stories about war?" Mr. Thomas chuckled. He hadn't been called to the front of a room in years, not since his last class, but something inside him, the quiet part, the one that had been waiting, said, "It's time." He walked to the front slowly. His steps were careful, but his heart was calm. The children sat on the floor. The room grew still. Mr. Thomas looked at their faces and smiled. Not too big, just enough. He took a breath and said softly, "Let me tell you about a man who lost everything, but still stood tall." The room leaned in. He was tired. He was poor. He failed many times. People laughed at him. Some called him weak. Some told him to give up, but he didn't. He paused. His name was Abraham Lincoln. A few kids whispered the name to themselves. And he was not strong because he won battles. He was strong because he kept going, even when it hurt, even when he was alone, even when he was afraid. One little girl raised her hand. Why didn't he quit? Mr. Thomas looked at her and smiled gently, because he believed in something bigger than his pain. And for the next 15 minutes he told them the story, not with big words or long facts, but with warmth, emotion, and heart. The children didn't look away. They listened with wide eyes, leaning forward, their drawings forgotten. When he finished, there was a moment of silence. Then came the sound of small claps, soft but real. One boy said, "You should come every week." Another added, "You make history sound like a movie." Mr. Thomas laughed, and this time the sound wasn't just polite. It was light. It was free. It felt like the old days, but better, because now it wasn't just teaching. It was sharing something from deep inside him. After the session, Jack came over and handed him a cup of tea. "You still have it," Jack said with a proud smile. "I thought I had forgotten," Mr. Thomas replied. "But maybe I just needed someone to ask." They sat side by side, watching the kids play again, their voices filling the room like sunlight. The walls were covered in drawings, colors, words, and now, new memories. Mr. Thomas looked at his hands. They had written many lessons, held Margaret's hand, held a daughter, Durer, closed many books, and now they held something else, purpose. He didn't need a classroom. He didn't need a title. He just needed a place to be useful. And now he had found it. As the day ended, he folded a small paper from his pocket, the note he had written on the porch just days before. "This is not retirement. This is my return." He smiled softly and whispered to himself, "Let's begin again." It was a quiet afternoon. The sky was cloudy, and the ocean looked gray. Mr. Thomas sat on the porch with a blanket across his knees, holding a warm cup of tea. The waves moved slowly, as if they too were remembering something. Jack stepped outside with the mail. "You got a letter," he said, placing an envelope on the table. Mr. Thomas looked at the name, Robert, his younger brother. He hadn't seen Robert in over 20 years. The last time they spoke, it ended in anger. There had been money, savings for their parents that care, and Robert had taken it and disappeared. No word, no apology, just silence. Mr. Thomas picked up the envelope slowly. His hands didn't shake, but his heart did. He opened it. Dear Thomas, I know I'm the last person you expect to hear from. Maybe the last person you want to. I'm writing not to explain because I know no words can fix what I broke. I was young. I was foolish. I thought I needed that money more than our family did. I ran from my mistakes. I ran from you. I've carried that regret every day. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope you're well. And if you're willing, I'd like to see you. Robert. Mr. Thomas folded the letter, placed it on the table, and sat still for a long time. The wind touched his face, but he didn't move. That night he didn't sleep much, not because of anger, not because of pain, but because something old had started knocking on the door of his heart. Could he forgive? He thought of Margaret. She always believed in second chances. She would say, some people don't come back, but when they do, don't slam the door. Let them explain. Let them be human. The next day, Mr. Thomas wrote a short letter. Dear Robert, I am still here. If you are truly ready to meet again, come. Let's talk, Thomas. A week later, Jack drove Mr. Thomas to a small cafe near the train station. It was quiet. A bell rang softly when they entered. Mr. Thomas sat near the window, and then Robert walked in. His hair was gray now, his shoulders lower, his steps slower, their eyes met. No words came at first. Then Robert said softly, You look the same. Mr. Thomas replied, So do you, just older, just like me. They sat. There was silence, but not heavy, just cautious. I'm sorry, Robert said, his voice cracking. I know, Mr. Thomas replied. I carried the anger for many years, but it never gave me peace. Robert looked down. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted to face what I ran from. Mr. Thomas nodded. He looked out the window, where the sun was breaking through the clouds. I'm not the same man I was, he said. I've learned that time doesn't heal everything, but love can. He looked at his brother. Would you like to walk by the ocean? Robert blinked. You mean it? You mean it? I do. And so they walked. Two old men, two brothers, step by step, not fixing the past, but choosing to build something new, one conversation, one quiet moment at a time. As the waves rolled beside them, Mr. Thomas felt something lift from his chest. Not all the weight, but enough. Enough to make space for something better. Not forgetting, not pretending, just forgiving. Weeks passed. The town by the ocean became more than a visit. It became a rhythm. Mr. Thomas no longer woke up wondering what to do. Each morning had meaning, each afternoon had connection, and each evening had peace. He continued to visit the community center. He didn't just tell stories now. He listened to others. A shy girl who loved to write. A teenage boy who hated reading but loved asking questions. A quiet mother who wanted to learn English so she could help her daughter. He sat with them one by one. He answered. He encouraged. He remembered what it meant to be useful. One day Maya, the young woman from the cafe, knocked on the center's door. Mr. Thomas, she said, would you consider something? He raised an eyebrow. What's that? We're starting a weekend storytelling club for kids, she smiled. But not just history. We want someone to guide them, help them find their voice. Mr. Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I don't have much time left, you know. Maya looked at him. Then let's make the time you do have matter more. He smiled. All right then, I'm in. From that weekend on, the storytelling circle began. Children sat in a half moon around him every Saturday morning. Some brought notebooks, others just brought questions. Why do people fight in wars? What makes someone brave? Do heroes always win? And Mr. Thomas didn't give perfect answers. He gave real ones, ones that made them think, not just memorize. He taught them that history isn't just about dates or battles. It's about people. People who tried, people who failed, people who loved, lost, and stood up again. One Saturday, a girl named Anna stayed after everyone left. She held her notebook close to her chest. "I don't like my voice," she said softly. Mr. Thomas looked at her gently. "Why not?" "It sounds small. It shakes." He nodded. "So did mine once." She looked at him with wide eyes. "But," he said, "I kept using it, even when it trembled. Because your voice, Anna, is not meant to be perfect. It's meant to be yours." She smiled, and in that smile he saw something. Courage being born. That night, Mr. Thomas sat on the porch, listening to the waves. The moon was high. The stars were soft. He thought about everything. Margaret, Jack, Leo, Robert, the children, the letters, the ocean. And he whispered to the wind, "I thought my story was over, but it turns out I was just between chapters." He reached into his pocket and took out a small card Maya had given him. It said, "Storytelling Circle, Lead Guide, Mr. Thomas." He smiled, not big, just enough, and then he whispered, "Let's keep going." It was a cool afternoon. The sky was painted with soft blues and quiet gold. The waves were gentle, and the wind moved through the trees like a lullaby. Mr. Thomas stood alone in the small garden behind Jack's house. In his hands was a small wooden box, the same box that once held Margaret's letters. Now it held more. Photos, a worn bookmark, a short story written by Anna, a thank you card from Leo, and a folded page titled My Return. He looked at the old tree in the corner of the garden. Its roots were strong. Its leaves shimmered in the breeze, a quiet witness to all seasons. Slowly, he knelt down. The earth was soft beneath his knees. With care, he dug a small hole under the tree. Not deep, just enough. He placed the box inside, like placing a part of himself back into the world. He whispered, "If one day a child finds this, let them know I was here. I lived, I loved, I lost, and I kept going." He pressed the soil back, gently. The tree stood still like it understood. Then he sat down on the small bench nearby. He didn't feel sad. He didn't feel heavy. He felt whole. This wasn't a goodbye. This was a message in the earth, a quiet legacy. He stayed there as the sun began to set, painting the garden in gold. From inside the house, Jack called, "Thomas, dinner's ready." "I'm coming," he replied with a smile, and as he stood, he touched the tree one last time. "Keep it safe," he said. "One day someone will need to remember." That night at the dinner table, laughter filled the room. Linda served soup. Jack told a silly joke. Maya stopped by with cookies. Anna brought her new story draft. Mr. Thomas read it aloud, his voice calm and full. Later, when the dishes were done and the stars returned to the sky, Mr. Thomas stepped out onto the porch alone. He looked up. The stars blinked gently. The sea whispered below. He closed his eyes, and in the quiet of his heart, there were no regrets, only peace, only gratitude, only the soft, powerful feeling of a story well lived.